So a lot of what I've developed for my patients, who then become wellness-based clients dealing with bone density, whether it be prevention or treatment, is based on the LIFTMOR trial. This particular study was published in 2018, and basically it got the ball rolling. We've long suspected that exercise was important. This trial indicated that perhaps the exercises that we were doing from beginning to end were not vigorous enough. So the LIFTMOR trial studied postmenopausal women who had already been diagnosed with low bone mass, either osteopenia or porosis. This particular study encompassed 8 months. The individuals trained 2 times a week, supervised, high intensity, 5 sets of 5 reps at 85% 1 repetition maximum. Now, not everybody started at this level. Some folks needed a 6-month or multiple month ramp up, but once they entered the trial, they could hit these parameters. Okay. Statistically significant improvements in bone mineral density, cortical thickness, with a very low risk of injury. I would encourage you, this particular study is open access. All you really have to do is enter LIFTMOR in your search bar. It'll bring you up to this study and several others. The exercises that the individuals did, again, eventually at 85% 1RM, were deadlift, squat variation, overhead press, and a chin-up with a jump. Now, I've incorporated many of these exercises into my own programs, but I will offer caution. People often need to do many, many weeks of training before they can do these exercises. But I would encourage you to review and look at this information if you are already working with individuals' bone density issues or want to develop that particular specialty.
We believe that when you're looking at an exercise program for any population, that you focus on trending clients closer to the CDC's recommended levels of daily physical activity. The current recommendation is at least 150 minutes of low to moderate intensity exercise, whether that is 3 50-minute sessions, 5 30-minute sessions, or somewhere in between. Hitting the total number is the priority. The recommendation for vigorous intensity is at least 75 minutes a week. With this level of effort being harder to sustain, maybe that becomes 5 sessions of 15 minutes or 3 times a week of 25 minutes. It is recommended to engage in at least 2 days a week of total body resistance training. Ideally, this would include weight-bearing or semi-weight-bearing exercises if modifications are necessary. Physically, we want to focus on improving muscle mass, posture, balance, and aerobic endurance. A well-rounded strength and conditioning program would consist of strength training that includes horizontal pressing and pulling, vertical pressing and pulling, knee-dominant and hip-dominant patterns, loaded carries, core exercises, and both low-intensity and high-intensity cardiovascular conditioning, with a greater percentage being lower intensity. Isolation work for the upper extremities and calves will also be important. Recommendations for set and rep schemes and loading parameters will depend highly on the individual's fitness level and training experience. A good rule of thumb for beginners is to find a weight that can be performed for 8 to 12 repetitions without compromising technique. If they fail to get 8 reps, it might be too heavy. If they can easily do 12, it might be too light. RPE, or rate of perceived exertion, is a way to measure the difficulty of an exercise, especially when you're unsure of what weights to prescribe. With beginners, we likely want to stay in an RPE range of 5 to 7, and for more advanced clients, at times we can push closer to the 8, 9, or 10 level of RPE, but this should be used sparingly and only if the client is comfortable doing so. BoneFit is a training program for healthcare professionals and exercise specialists designed by the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation to help them prescribe safe and effective workouts for people with osteoporosis. The guidelines in the BoneFit program are similar to the ones that we referenced above, with an emphasis on finding a safe entry point to exercise. The BoneFit program also places an emphasis on daily balance training and what they refer to as spine sparing, as well as back extensor training. When they reference quote-unquote spine sparing, what they're referring to is essentially teaching people how to safely hip hinge, not only in the gym to perform deadlifts and RDLs, but also in regards to how it translates to ADLs, or activities of daily living. Of course, you can't always be attentive to your posture when you're doing activities around the house, but the better your positioning can be when you go to pick up heavy objects, the better. Ultimately, you will never completely avoid spinal flexion, but when it comes to supporting clients with osteoporosis, the more successful that we can be in improving their strength, balance, and kinesthetic awareness, the better off they'll be. For balance, we can think of both static and dynamic activities. Static can be stationary balancing on one foot, while dynamic might include hopping or pattern walking like figure eights or karaoke. It's important to assess or at least get a feel for their ability before prescribing a certain movement. The last thing that you want to do is prescribe something that is too challenging that could lead to a fall. We should also think about the cognitive aspect of balance. Perhaps you'll have clients converse or count backwards in threes while balancing on one foot. Challenge them both physically and cognitively. A well-rounded program for someone with osteoporosis looks a lot like a comprehensive program for any client. There are just a handful of considerations to make.